Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to my channel. I got new equipment. You're a new camera. You're a new lens. I mean, you're a whole new thing. You're not my phone anymore. Look at how clear you are. You're so pretty. Today's topic is perception is reality. And if you want to change your reality, if you're unhappy, if you're a victim, if things are always happening to you, if you're like, frack my life, or of course, it's not your fault, but you're responsible for that. So I'll get to that. But first, perception is reality. You've probably heard this said. It's a known thing. But what does it really mean? It means that the way that you perceive something will determine how you interact with it. If you were bit by a dog as a child, you're going to perceive dogs, or maybe a specific race of dogs. Like, a lot of people don't like pit bulls for some reason, even though they're the sweetest. You're going to perceive that as a threat. Whereas if you grew up breeding dogs like me, you're going to see dogs as like a member of the family, and you're going to want them to think you're cool when you walk in a room. That's like it's a version of what I'm talking about, because this goes on a large scale. And I like to think of perception changing your reality in the way that 3D lenses change the way you perceive a film that you're seeing. We have all kinds of lenses that we wear that we're not even aware that we're wearing. So it's more like we have lenses on, and then we have like filters that we put on those lenses. And so the reality that we're seeing is just super, super dirty. It doesn't mean that you're delusional. It doesn't mean that you're seeing things that aren't there physically. Like, this is all here. I'm here. What isn't real is reality with your judgment placed upon it. So if you have a negative or a positive perception of something, it's changing the way that you're interacting with it. So for example, to put in a different perspective for you, I'm a tour guide. I take groups of people of like between 25 and 50 people around Europe for like 2 weeks at a time. And so they're my charge, they're in my protection. And when we are in highly touristic areas, that's a really stressful moment for me, and it's the best part of their trip. I'm worried about pickpockets and people getting lost, and making our appointments and schedule on time. And they're not worried about that at all. They're just in awe of what's going on. And there may be somebody in the group who's really afraid in crowds. There are people who are natural adventurers. And so everybody's experience is completely different, and yet we're all experiencing the same thing. So how do you apply that to your daily life? Well, if you are a victim a lot, if you find yourself constantly saying, frack my life, if you are if you're depressed, if you're going through a rough time and that rough time has lasted a long time, you need to start reassessing how you perceive reality. This is where it's your responsibility. It's not your fault that you're in this state, because until we know something, we're ignorant of it. And ignorance is not an insult. It's just a state of being. Ignorant just means you don't have the information. So if you're going through something difficult, then you need to just reassess the way that you look at it. Wherever you're having problems, wherever you're having conflict in the present, stop looking at it as a problem. I know it's a problem. I understand there are big problems. And this also doesn't mean don't grieve if you need to grieve. There are things that need to be exercised. Use common sense and logic, but also be honest with yourself and don't try to skirt the issue. So it takes work, and it's not something that everybody wants to do, because it means letting go of that narrative. It means letting go of, I'm a victim right now, or I was a victim in the past. But if you're unhappy, then you can take responsibility for this. You're the only one who has responsibility for that. Humans are incredibly resilient, and so are you. You're not an exception. You can look at your past, find how it is a seed for a beautiful tree of growth and happiness and prosperity in your life, and water that. You don't have to water the seed that has been there of, this is not a good thing, this is, my life is crap, I'm not worth anything, why do anything? And it's not easy. But who you are is determined by how you see reality. How do you see reality? When you go to the store, do you see a bunch of idiots and jerks? Do you see a bunch of selfish people, or do you just see another sea of beings? If you see a bunch of idiots and jerks and stupid people, you're probably going to be disgruntled most of the time because they're constantly doing something to you. They're not doing things the way that you want them to. But, you know, for all you know, you're an idiot or a jerk or a stupid person to them, because we all live in our own subjective reality, and you get to choose that reality. That's why it's subjective. That's how it's subjective. You get to choose. So what is the tone of your narration? What is the tone of your perspective right now? Are you looking at everything through lenses that say, everyone sucks, I'm better than everyone, I know better? I mean, I know a lot of people like that. I know a lot of people like that, and I used to be one of them. And I know exactly where it comes from, and I understand the logic behind it. And to be honest, it's not really something that we choose consciously to believe. It's just sort of something that our culture breeds into us, so that we all end up thinking everyone is other, everyone is the enemy. I mean, I have friends who say that they don't have girlfriends because women are crazy. Girlfriends who say this. And this is just absolutely a product of what we've been fed by the media, by films, by all of the entertainment. And it's just simply not true. I mean, it's not true. If you don't think that this is true, have a look at the Bechdel test, and then you'll start to see what I'm talking about. So whenever you get frustrated, whenever you get annoyed, whenever you get angry, whenever you get sad, whenever you get anything that is other than in harmony with the present moment, whenever you get something that's a bit of friction in your reality, then take a second and look at it, and look at how you're looking at it. Because my reality used to be entirely different. I did not live in the same reality that I live in right now, and that is not delusional. It is a state of psychosis, but that's the thing. We're all living in a state of psychosis. You are in a state of psychosis. I am in a state of psychosis for whatever I dislike or fear or adore, because it's not interacting with reality as reality is. It's reacting to my projection or my opinion or my judgment of that reality. And that's not real. I used to live in a world where I was degraded and insulted and treated like a piece of meat and objectified and seen as a sexual object only for years. And so here's the sort of thing, like, I can forgive myself for seeing the world that way because I was seen that way, and I was taught that that's the way that I was seen. And so because that's the way that I was taught that I was seen, that's what I was looking for. I live in Paris, which is not the same as far as like the Midwest of America goes when concerned with men and women interacting with each other, but it isn't as bad as I was living it. I lived in a world where every time I went outside, I was hit on, I was degraded, I was berated, I was objectified, and that really happened. It really happened. The thing is, once I started to realize that my perception changed my reality, then I started looking for different things. And the power in that is realizing that I was looking for validation for my belief about French society. Subconsciously, of course, like I wasn't aware that I was looking for this feedback, this response. But when I believed that Frenchmen were repulsive and that I was an object, because that's where I was sort of groomed to be by family and friends and society and pop culture and everything, I was looking for, in that state of mind, without realizing it, I was looking for validation of that. And I happened to live in a more macho country than others, and it was over-validated. So when I went on the street, I would subconsciously be looking for it as almost like a defense, like I needed to defend myself from this thing that didn't quite exist until I found it. And so it was like confirmation bias, if you want. And then once I realized, like, a friend of mine had this conversation with me, and he's, a meditator and basically a monk, and he had the guts to say, like, don't you think you're a little responsible for that? And I was pissed when he said it. Like, I'm sorry, what? Are you saying that they don't do it? He had patience enough to explain it to me, which at the time I couldn't hear. It wasn't until a couple of years later that I finally heard, or I finally understood what he was talking about. It was something that I was putting out there. So I was looking for, of course, there are the men who are going to objectify me. They're there. But I was looking for them and making eye contact with them and giving them shitty looks, or like avoiding them, or like preemptively getting angry. And this is something that, you know, mirror neurons and projection and mirrors, like this is what we do as humans. They saw this in me and they knew, like that is who they are when confronted with someone like me. And when confronted with like a sweet old lady, then they're a perfect gentleman. This isn't to say all French men. This is just the specific ones who were responding to my trigger, who I was putting something out there and they responded. And my universe is completely different now. It was gradual at first, but then I started to notice I don't get hit on anymore. What changed? And it was that I started making eye contact with everyone, and not, you know, or maybe just scoping out or seeing or observing, allowing into my awareness all of the other parts of life instead of just the ones that confirmed my victim status. So it's a hard pill to swallow, but if you want to be happy and you're unhappy, look at your own perception. Look at where you're unhappy and start to see how you can tweak that perception. Yeah, I don't know if there's really much more I can say about the subject right now, but I feel like this is a topic that can never end because it's reality, and we all are living, like I said, in a state of psychosis by interacting with people and places and things as though they are our opinion of them. And it's not something that we can overcome, I think, barring enlightenment. But you can remove many of the filters, and you can also be aware that the filters are there, changing your perception, and that'll change how you interact with it, and your life will in turn be much happier and more abundant and prosperous and happy. Did I say happy? It'll be happier. You'll be happier. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do, to look at yourself anyway, objectively, because you don't want to look at the bad things about yourself. You don't want to look at the negative things, because if you do, then you have to admit them, and then you probably have to change something, and that means that you're wrong, and that the people that you were being right to were right and you were actually wrong, and that's not cool. But none of it matters. Like, none of it matters. If you just let it go, there's no right and wrong. There's no such thing. There's just ignorance and knowledge. So if you were acting a certain way, it's just because you didn't have all the information, and that a big part of that is due to perception. So I'm not trying to discount or discredit your suffering. It's absolutely real. It really, really, really is real. But you don't have to live in that state of suffering. And when you start to look at it and question it, and on top of that, acknowledge the good and the positive and the things that you can be grateful for, and the generous and loving people in your life. And if you don't have that, then you can be grateful for a sunrise or a cloud or your own smile or your breath. Then your reality starts to change. And I can't tell you how that's going to happen, because that's unique to you, but it's worth it. And like I said, it doesn't mean that your suffering isn't real. It just means that suffering is going to happen. That's human nature. That's like the Buddha's first teaching, is the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering. So what it means when you start to change your perception is that the depths are not quite so low, and they're a lot fewer and further between. So you don't experience pain and suffering with as much agony as you did before. And that sounds all right, doesn't it? I mean, I was sold on it, and it changed my reality. And it's true. So many things about my life right now could be the things that pulled me down into another depression spiral. And yet here I am. I'm still afloat, and I'm smiling, and I actually have had trouble making videos the last couple of weeks, because I was doing it from a place before of focusing on suffering, and the motivation to make the videos was like, hey, this is a thing. I don't know, there was just some kind of like agitation within me, and I'm like, no, I'm really happy now, and I don't feel like I need to fix anything, so what do I talk about? So I need to find a workaround for that, and I'm working on it. But don't lose hope, and don't think that I'm saying that your suffering isn't real. You can just change the way that you live it. That is absolutely within your hands. And if you need more information on this, I'd be happy to put together another video or another string of videos. Just let me know in the comments what you think, and yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, as always, for your time, attention, love, and support. Keep giving it. Your attention is the most precious thing that you have. Don't forget that. So pay attention to where your attention is and what kind of attention you have on whatever it is you're paying attention to. And that'll change radically your reality. So thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Easy. I don't know how to say this. It's freaking the dog out. It's almost like I have to get like a certain amount of energy out. For fuck's sake! Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a friend. Travel down the road and back again. Meow. I don't. This is so dumb.
It sound right, boy.